The internet is a big place. A lot bigger, in fact, than any other places I've been physically. Except for space. But you know what isn't in space? Racism. Yet. Now, the internet has been alive as long as I have. I pretty much grew up with it, and now it's pretty hard to live without it, especially since now it's kind of become my job. And trust me, I've tried. I recently bought this flip phone because I wanted to try using it, and as soon as I got it in my car to go somewhere, I realized I didn't have the directions and obviously didn't have a map, so that attempt didn't last very long. But the internet and technology has brought so much efficiency into our daily lives. Things like directions or quick communication or music or subscribing to my YouTube channel have all become so easy that we don't even think about it anymore. In fact, we don't think about so many things that we stop thinking about everything. What was I just thinking about? I don't know. That's why efficiency can also be harmful. With social media, false information and lack of health education is rampant. It's a lot easier to look at a headline than read the entire article, especially when companies thrive off of clickbait and controversy, making way for more ignorance and things like racists to run loose and not even have to show their faces. Enter online racism. Were you loved as a child? No? White? Whew. Thank God. Need a way to project these amplified feelings of anguish and resentment, but are a little bit shy and non-confrontational. Aw, well, look no further, as online racism is the perfect solution for you.
Hi, I'm an incel that never learned how to wash his penis properly. Now you might be wondering why you can't see my face. Well, anonymity is only one of the perks that comes with online racism. Now your racism can reach new limits without fear of conflict. I've said so many slurs that I've lost count. It's pretty revolutionary stuff.
Don't believe us? Take a look at all of our satisfied customers. Can you believe that they're able to comment this on a video that a kid made? Don't let IRL racism limit you from becoming your true self. And don't be one of the stupid people that gets caught being racist in a video when you could be just as racist in the comment section. Work smarter, not harder, and vote Musk 2024. So would you look at that? The internet allows it so you don't have to think. But that's why I'm here, to fill your empty, TikTok-affected, post-apocalyptic brains with thoughts. Here's one. If racism bad, why keep happening? Are things like stereotypes perpetuated by social media? Do larger creators realize that making fun of an entire race may have effects on said race? Do Indians really smell? And does my inability to get a girlfriend have to do with me being Indian? Because it certainly can't be anything else. Well, today I have brought together some brown people and foreign to help me tackle these issues. And hopefully they can help me find answers and maybe I can get a girlfriend. I mean, solve racism. Because that's more important and probably easier if I'm being honest. Now, I can't talk about Indophobia and racism against Indians without opening up the floor to who you consider as Indian, or without my I'm smarter than you nerd glasses. That's better. Every South Asian and Middle East Asian are commonly left out of the Asian group because they don't fit what the Western world believes as the stereotype. And stereotypes like that are pretty common. In fact, the umbrella term South Asian, though important to be inclusive to all representatives of that region, is entirely an American-made term. People in South Asia don't call themselves South Asians because they know their own ethnicity, so it would be kind of redundant and stupid. It would be like if I called myself North American. But for the sake of the video and the hope that maybe I can educate some people on the different countries and cultures of South Asia, I want to help define and dismantle the term. But I couldn't do it alone, so I brought on a friend, fellow content creator, and man smarter than I. And this is definitely a live call. It wasn't pre-recorded whatsoever. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Arun, right now? You get it? It's funny because it's your last. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
So my name is Arun Ano. That's my online name, and basically what I do on Twitch is people refer to me as the Indian Hasanabi.
That's so funny. You actually sound just like him. So,
and for good reason, because I cover basically news from the South Asian, basically subcontinent, the Indian subcontinent. So that is India, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Afghanistan.
Wow, yeah.
Nepal, Bangladesh, Myanmar as well.
Okay.
So usually I covered news. My news is usually centered around India, But I often dabble. I often talk about Sri Lanka. I often talk about, because again, I'm from South India, I'm Tamil, and there's a lot of us there. So that's usually what I do.
Okay, so you clearly know a lot more than me. How would you sort of describe the diversity within South Asia?
Like, saying South Asia is diverse is like underselling it. It's like underselling like what South Asia really is at the end of the day, right? It really like if I were to show you like Manipur, for example, or if I were to show you people from Nagaland, you would like if I were to show a person from Nagaland, for example, and say, no, this person's Indian, they wouldn't believe me. They wouldn't fucking believe me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, and that's exactly like in middle school there's a guy from Mizoram, from northeastern India, and he struggled to explain to everyone that he's Indian. Like, everyone just lost their minds. They're like, you're Indian. And it's like, yeah, because India is not like, not everyone in India is going to look like me, and it's not going to look like you, right? Not every one of us is going to look the same. Like, like we have like people from all different walks. Like, India is kind of like the United States in that sense, because we have people of all different skin tones and all different like backgrounds and stuff. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's wild, and that's just India. Did you guys hear that? That's okay. You're gonna want to get off your phone if you want to raise your grades by the end of the semester. They know who I'm talking to, but you can't complain about strict due dates and the formal way in which I conduct this class if I'm trying to set you up to be adults in the real world, and you can't even get off your fucking phone. This is 5th grade. Act like your age. So sorry, Arun. You shouldn't have to see that. But yeah, that's a great point. Manipur, Nagaland, Mizoram, these are all states just in India. And here is a map for reference, but there are 7 other countries in South Asia. So even just that should put it in perspective. I mean, you guys know how many different kinds of white people there are, right? Irish, Italian, Polish, Greek, German, French. The list unfortunately goes on forever. But it's the same concept, except less people are educated about us because of white supremacy. And this lack of education affects brown people and their identities, how they perceive themselves, and how they want to be perceived. It's made accepting and understanding your culture that much more difficult. I ended up talking to 2 friends and fellow brown content creators in preparation for this video so that they could share their perspectives, both as creators and as brown people.
Hello, my name is Yunus Al-Zubairi.
My name is Michael Lakshman Udayakumar.
I am 21 years old, and I've been a Muslim content creator since I was 14 years old.
I'm a content creator, I guess you could say that. And my dad is Sri Lankan and my mother is Cambodian. And I don't have a set religious faith, but I'm pretty particular to just Buddhism and like that sort of nature.
Have you ever been mistaken for a different ethnicity online or in real life? If so, which one?
I've been mistaken numerous times for lots of identities. They could range from, I think mostly they're, hitting the Desi marks, whether it's Indian, Pakistani. I got Bangladeshi once, but it's mainly been online. I feel like a lot of the times people online won't say a lot of things to your face. So like a lot of what I've gotten mistaken for in a negative light is online, 100%. I have been like called Indian at times. Like I remember in high school that was a thing. Like in high school, I was always like, because I'm brown, like that's what it is. People associate brown, you're Indian or Pakistani or just Desi in general. Mm-hmm. And like, I hated, I didn't know how to respond to it because it was very odd to just be called another ethnicity in a derogatory manner. Like, it's just like, how do you respond to that? Like, no, I'm not Indian. What are you talking about, dude? Like, what do I say? Like, it's just like, you just have to turn the cheek and like you just don't respond. Like that's all it is.
So I grew up in New York. I'm from the Bronx originally, but I went to school. I moved to the suburbs when I was fairly young, and I went to school there. about a half hour away from the city, essentially, or from the Bronx, from where I grew up. And it was my neighborhood, or just the school I went to, was pretty diverse in terms of like elementary up until high school. It was pretty diverse, diverse. There was a lot of diversity, but of course, growing up in the '90s and stuff like that, Indians were never seen as cool, right? So if I were to get a joke cracked on me, literally the joke from, you know, whatever kid, whether he was white or black, whatever, the joke would be, oh, you're Indian, you know, like that, as if that was a bad thing, like, you know, like
Yeah.
like being Indian or South Asian. Of course, they didn't know I was Sri Lankan because they don't know shit. But
Yeah.
but their retort would be like, oh, you're Indian, like that, as if that was a bad thing, like to be this specific race of people, or you know what I mean. So I wouldn't necessarily say I grew up. Not that I was bullied like crazy. Of course, like you get made fun of as a kid, and you know, and how you deal with it is how you deal with it. But I never took that as like a bad thing. Like, of course, I understood the stereotypes, and I understood that because of whatever was media was out, or whatever, Indians aren't necessarily seen in the coolest light when we were growing up.
Yeah.
Because again, we had no real representation of just like
didn't. No,
regular,
absolutely.
normal like Indian kids or South Asian kids. It was always the extremes of stereotypes. As I got older, Kumar from Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle was like the first representation of, like, when I watched it, of course it was like, it's like a funny stoner movie, right?
Yeah.
But as a kid, when I was watching, I was like, damn, this dude is a fucking regular guy. Like,
Yeah.
I can relate to this guy.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, it's a regular ass Indian guy from New Jersey in the movie. Like,
yeah.
you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
we're
So
normal
crazy.
people. Like, we're not just
Yeah.
like these stereotypes of like always owning, you know, gas stations or
Yeah,
convenience
we can
stores
also
and having to thick accents.
smoke weed sometimes. Come
Yeah,
on.
literally. Yeah, you know what I mean? And when that movie came out, so my last name, like I said before, is Udaya Kumar.
Mm-hmm.
So when that movie came out, they correlated, oh, this guy's name is Kumar. Kumar is in your last name. And that's kind of like the nickname I grew up with. I
okay.
forgot when that movie came out. It was in like the mid-2000s.
So, okay, you have some context now. I hope you walk away from this video with a tad more knowledge about the diversity of South Asia. You're probably checking the timeline right now. I don't know why I'm talking like I'm about to end the video. I'm not done yet. We're only on page 6 out of 13. But now we can get into the real point of contention. And I can solve racism and win a Nobel Peace Prize. Just kidding. The fame isn't what it's about for me. No, I just want to help people. Humbly help people. This is going to be a big section of the video with lots of moving parts, so I'm going to tread carefully and specify where I can so that no one gets left behind. Jack, get your head off the table, man. Pay attention. Please, I do not want to have to call your mom again. You're fine, but please don't let it happen again. Before I dive into online racism, I first want to discuss South Asian on South Asian racism and kind of like that internalized racism portion, because it does play a big part when transferring to then online racism. Now, when I talk about this sort of internalized racism, I'm referring to classism and colorism, except in India, they have this sort of advanced classism that is so impressively oppressive. I've never seen anything like it. The caste system in India is one of the oldest social stratifications that still divides people today. It is a type of social hierarchy that was implemented some 3,000 years ago. This is a visual of the caste system, but it's kind of understated because it leaves out the other thousands of subcastes.
Caste determines where you're allowed to go in a lot of circumstances. So there are many temples in India where people of marginalized castes are not allowed to go. They cannot enter that. There are certain apartments that, for example, that upper castes, like oppressor castes, will not lease or sublet to marginalized castes. So it also determines where you can also rent. It also determines what kinds of connections you have. It also determines it determines how easy it is for you to get into college. It determines what kind of harassment you'll face on a daily basis, right? It is a deeply ingrained part of. It's a very deeply ingrained part of Indian culture. It's a very deeply ingrained part. I mean, the various Indian cultures of India. It's not one culture, but it's a very deeply ingrained part of India. It like, to give you an example, right? The current president of India is Draupadi Murmu. right? So Draupadi Murmu belongs to a group of people called the Santalis. They're an Adivasi or indigenous group of India that falls completely outside the caste system, right? And some of them have been Sanskritized, some of them have not, right? It depends. But she was not allowed into the inner sanctum of a particular temple. Why? Because of her caste background. This is the president of India, mind you. This is the president of India. Even she's not allowed into the inner sanctum of a temple because of her caste, because of her, caste background. So it's, and to give you an idea of how much the legacy, so in order to understand caste, the most important concept you have to understand is untouchability. I think Americans and people outside of India have been fed sort of a wrong notion of like what caste really is at the end of the day. They were taught the Chaturvarna system, which is the food pyramid you'll see in like social studies classes when they cover So the truth of the matter is those 4 castes don't neatly fall into place in every state in India. So if you go to Tamil Nadu, for example, those 4 castes do not neatly align in the sense of most castes in Tamil Nadu fall in the 4th, like the bottom rung of that caste system. Most of the castes, they're either considered Dalit castes, scheduled tribes, or they're considered Shudras. There's only 2 castes in Tamil Nadu that are not Shudras for the most part. And those are the 2 Brahmin castes of Tamil Nadu, Ayers and Iyengars.
Okay.
And also, if you're not from Tamil Nadu in particular, your last name, Sharma, that's a legacy of your caste.
Yeah.
That's a legacy of your caste. So it informs everything about you. Like, to give you an idea, there are, in India, you have this very paradoxical situation, or you have this very, contradictory situation where you have an entire group of people with names like Sharma, Agnihotri, Iyer, Rajput, Mishra, Shukla, so on and so forth, right? That sort of, you have people that, have that name, whether it's their choice or not, but they have the privilege of being able to stick that name at the end of their, as a surname, right?
Yeah.
But then you have an entire class of people in India for which the name of their caste itself is a slur. It is equivalent to a racial slur.
And what sucks is, just like anywhere else, there's blatant ignorance and hypocrisy surrounding the belief of caste and its effects. I mean, there are so many people that just don't believe it is a systemic issue, but rather a past issue that's been resolved because it quote unquote doesn't exist anymore. Sound familiar? But this casteism has evolved into a sort of deep-rooted hatred for people that not only look just like you, but also come from the same place as you.
More recently, I've cosplayed Pavitra Pravakar from Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and he's Spider-Man India. And it's funny because, people will be like, oh, he's an Indian character. Like, that's right, like, he's brown, he's a person of color, like, that's you. But I've still gotten those comments where, like, and unfortunately, this is probably just from the side of the world, like I've had people that are, I'm assuming, Indian being like, oh, you're not Indian enough, or you don't look Indian, or, you know what I mean? So
interesting.
So it's kind of crazy that, like, these are the people that that are where I'm initially not technically from, but like these are the race or ethnicity that I am, and they're telling me I'm not it enough. You know what I mean? So it's something new that I took into consideration. When I see those comments like, oh, you're not Indian enough, or you don't look Indian, or blah, blah, blah. Like, technically, you're right. I'm not. Like, my dad is Sri Lankan. But it's just the fact that, we, in recently, Across the Spider-Verse, we have a brown superhero, like an Indian superhero, South Asian superhero in Pavitra Pravakar. You would think that that's a win for
all South Asians.
For all the South Asians, like, you know what I mean? Exactly. So to be represented, no matter if you're from Sri Lanka, if you're from India, if you're from Bangladesh, Pakistan, wherever, if you speak Tamil, Hindi, Sinhalese, whatever, any of that, like, regardless, like, you would think, wow, we're getting represented in a major media market, like Hollywood, like this is awesome. But you know, you're gonna still get those people from, I guess. To be fair, I don't know if they're from that side of the world, but you know, I'm
Well, it
gonna
is-
assume they
yeah.
are because they're coming at me with the vitriol of, oh, I see that you're brown, but you're not Indian enough, or you're not South Asian enough.
Yeah, but you're not
because,
this kind of brown,
they're
you know?
Yeah, they're assuming that, yeah, I am American. So, but again, it could be just the fact that they don't think I fit the stature, which is like, you know, a nitpick that they can have because
Yeah,
technically,
it's
when it comes to cosplaying, people want the people that cosplay to look exactly like the character that they love, but that's, you know, more or less that's not going to be true all the time, you know.
Now, when I talk about online racism, I'm really just referring to racism through a new medium. A medium in which it's easier to be bolder, and that unfortunately leads to harsher examples of racism more often. Now, there's a lot of ways that people can be racist in real life. At its basis, though, racism stems from the lack of just not knowing. That's why kids are so fucking mean. Because they don't know shit. They're dumb, small people that have an undeveloped prefrontal cortex, and honestly, they get away with way too much. But at the same time, a kid being ignorant is a lot more acceptable than an adult being ignorant. Because adults are supposed to know better, right?
So like I wasn't always as, you know, intolerable of bullshit online. I mean, pretty early on, I'd say like probably when I was around 17 years old, 16 years old, that's when I like fully kicked into gear. Like, hey, like I'm like done tolerating this. I really am. Because like
Yeah.
before I was in the mindset of all publicity is good publicity. All likes is good likes. Comments are good comments. Like as a
the
14-year-old,
likes. Yeah.
15-year-old,
Dude,
you
that shit
know,
felt so good, man.
literally. So I was like, dude, let them fight in my comment sections. I don't care if they're arguing about who's getting cast.
Yeah.
But then like it just got to a point where it was so like, cause bro, nerds are, they take this shit so seriously, bro.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And like it wasn't to an extent where I was like, yo, this is too much. Like this is a lot of comments, but like, bro, like majority of them are bad. And it's because they cast a black woman for Starfire. I'm just like, bro, like
Yeah.
that's what like really like kicked
That's why
into
you're getting
gear.
upset right now?
Yeah.
Now, when we talk about racism, it's important to talk about racism between people of color and to denote the cause and effects of white supremacy. Because then ignorance is formed from a basis of competition and the desire to gain resources and advantages over other marginalized people rather than just from a privileged standpoint. I brought Foreign on, another fellow creator, to help me discuss this because even though he isn't South Asian, he did grow up with a lot of South Asians in the Bahamas.
There was another girl named Neha. Neha was nice to me, but like due to like this experience I had, I was a little skeptical. And she one time brought me lunch, or like she wanted to share a lunch with me.
Yeah.
And it was just like big. I remember this fondly. Like she brought it into the classroom, and people were just like, "What is that smell?" And I was just like, and Neha was just like literally in front of me, and this was more so peer pressure, and everybody was just like, it's just like, what did you shit inside a container and like bring it into the classroom?
Yeah.
And like she's like no, but like she can't like necessarily defend herself. Actually, I think that English wasn't her first language at that point.
Okay.
And like people were kind of like brushing me. It was just like, oh, you can eat that, like talking to me because like she's giving it to me.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
I joined in on it. Like I was just like, hell no, like I ain't eating this shit inside. I said like this, like they were calling this shitty chicken. Like it was curry chicken, and I was like, no, it was shitty kitchen.
Yeah.
And like she broke out in tears. And like I felt like this weird conflict because I was just like, actually, like she was nice to me, but at the same time, like it was this way. At even a young age, I was trying to negotiate with the bullies at that point, trying to negotiate some type of safety with the people, the in group, the cool kids. I'm trying to negotiate my safety so that they don't tease me, call me fat or call me chubby or something like that. So I am now going to denigrate this Indian person. And I justified it because I was just like, oh, well, she probably didn't like me anyway. Or her parents wouldn't like me anyway because of the past.
Yeah, interesting. I also feel like at that age, it's all about trying to survive
Yes.
You know, it's just like you have to do anything you can at that point to kind of just like make it out alive.
But yeah, like that was mostly my experiences, and I think at the root of these experiences, spoiler alert, it's white supremacy.
Yeah.
You know, just like how I negotiated with the in group being the bullies as a kid, trying to negotiate for my safety as a marginalized chubby little boy, by denigrating another marginalized Indian girl.
Yeah.
I'm at a different age. There's all of these different conversations and negotiations happening where marginalized people have no qualms with marginalizing other marginalized people if it means that they get access to some type of resources under a white supremacist society.
However, online, it's a little bit different. You don't have to show your face, your age, or anything about you. It's a racist wet dream. But that doesn't even matter to a lot of people. Some people couldn't care less. It's simply that guise of having a layer of protection via the internet. At the end of the day, you're still not saying anything to anyone's face, so you're going to end up being more bold than you would be otherwise. Things like name calling or stereotyping, prejudice or mockery are all things that occur in real life but are repeated tenfold online. Hey, I've had my fair share of rage moments with white women online about what is and isn't cultural appropriation. And in real life, I would never say anything. It's even worse because my stutter really prohibits me from being confrontational in the wild. So I have tendencies and impulses of being somewhat of a loose cannon online. But those days are over. That's not who I am anymore, okay? I've changed. Now, I've never been racist online. I'm just proving my point that it is easier to speak your mind. There has been a recent resurgence of Indian videos going viral on the internet. Now, it's been a while since something like this has happened because TikTok recently got banned in India. So since then, there's been some quiet, but I guess Indian videos on Instagram have been going viral again. And oh boy, have the floodgates opened. Now I don't really understand why, but it's really easy to be racist to South Asians. I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit to grab from. Things like tech support or taxi driver or 7-Eleven owner, which by the way, I don't understand how that one is an insult. If you own a 7-Eleven, doesn't that make you pretty wealthy? I don't see how that's a bad thing. My God, you own a gas station? Fucking loser. I wish I owned a gas station. But these interviews of people asking other people what race they wouldn't date, and most of the answers being Indians, really shows how personified these stereotypes have become.
What race would you guys not date and why?
I'm not gonna date no Indian.
But I'm not dating no Indian.
These Indian
That the majority of people can only see Indians and Pakistanis and Bangladeshis for their stereotypes. And yes, there is a fair share of cringy Indian content, just like in America and just like everywhere else in the world. But because South Asians are mocked so often that even when there's a video that isn't even cringy, it's just Indian people being Indian people and I guess having Indian accent, there is still just as much hate. Reminds me of a time I'm not terribly fond of. A time where it was popular to be a smelly white man that shit on kids. But I'm not talking about this smelly white man. I'm talking about this one, who actually looks like he smells really good. He looks like he smells like sandalwood. If you're unaware, allow me to take you back to the year of 2018. A year that did not smell like sandalwood, but instead like racism and hate. Whatever that smells like. This was a big year for YouTube, as up until this point, PewDiePie was the #1 most subscribed channel on the platform. And everyone loves PewDiePie. How could you not? He never did anything wrong, ever. In fact, he did so many not wrong things that he was able to get away with so much. Like accidentally starting a massive racist hate train that targeted Indians online, which I'm sure bled into real life. How did he do this? Well, there was this other channel named T-Series, an Indian music label that releases a plethora of different genre music. Music that my dad loves and at the time I hated. Why, as an Indian person, would I hate Indian music? Well, because T-Series was catching up to PewDiePie. They were about to dethrone the king. And PewDiePie is an individual content creator, but T-Series is a corporation. And I've been anti-capitalist since I left the womb, baby. Just kidding, I followed the masses. I was a sheep led to slaughter. It's embarrassing. So because of this feud, PewDiePie started unserious beef with T-Series and made a diss track towards them named B-Word Lasagna. Now, at the time, I didn't think anything of this because, again, I was a sheep. I couldn't think for my fucking self. But holy shit, is this diss track overtly racist. With lines like, I'm a blue-eyes white dragon, while you're just a dark magician. Your language sounds like it came from a mumble rap community. And constant nods to the Bobs and Vagine meme, which is just an overplayed stereotype. A Reddit post I found discusses this controversy the best. Which, by the way, I'm very surprised that this Reddit thread didn't take the side of PewDiePie, because threads like this are kind of notorious for being on the side of racists. But this was a breath of fresh air for sure. Kenny Brahms says, Felix doesn't merely reference T-Series as a company that so happens to be Indian, but rather conflates T-Series with India, and by association, Indians. When Felix does this, his insults are not merely aimed at T-Series, they are aimed at India and Indians as a whole. So it's safe to say that this could have had some implications on Indians as a whole. And, well, it did. Not only did it increase unnecessary and inadvertent racism towards Indians and South Asians, but it also gave racists and white supremacists an outlet to just spew hate. PewDiePie making racist jokes wasn't new and didn't end there, so as a result, there was a part of his audience that enjoyed hearing those jokes. Like the New Zealand shooter, who broadcasted part of his attack and urged watchers to subscribe to PewDiePie. Now, I know a lot of this is unintentional on Felix's part, but as a cis white man with a lot of power, poking fun at marginalized groups will only do you so much good. And as someone who is as privileged as that, it is your responsibility to educate yourself so that young brown kids don't end up in the crossfire. Because I promise you, being brown at that time was not fun. So what do? Do we take away people's freedom of speech? No, I don't think censorship would make things better. It'd probably make things worse. I mean, I'm sure we can create safer online environments, but at the end of the day, the root of the problem is racism. And as much as I thought I could solve racism, I'll be honest, this one might be too much for me to tackle on my own. But hey, don't say I didn't try. However, instead of directing our anger at fellow people, we can direct our anger elsewhere. We, especially and more specifically people of color, have a common enemy, that being white supremacy, its systemic effects, and how we operate because of it. Creating solidarity between races and among class is really one of the only things that we can do.
The investment in marginalized folks not coalescing and organizing is a well-documented one, and also one that is in direct support of the status quo.
Yeah.
They understand, and by they, I mean the oligarchs of Western society, understand that if a black person sees that he has more in common with a South Asian person, and both of them also have the same, more in common with a Latino person, and take it one step further, has also more in common with a poor white working class person, than they do the 1%.
The 1%.
The Bill Gates, the Elon Musk, even the Jay-Z's and the Obamas.
Yeah,
I have more in common with these folk than I do the 1%. And if we were able to organize and create action towards changing our material conditions, rallying for community support, like unions, and working together as a community in order to lift each other up. Outside of it just being like a kumbaya moment, like there's a numbers game when it comes to that.
Absolutely.
Like,
and
by nature,
they understand that, and they know that, like, if we come together with the amount that we have, like, you know, they wouldn't be able to do anything. And I do think that, like, I think I've talked to you about this, but Spike Lee's film Do the Right Thing really, like, emphasizes this point well, and kind of just like looks at that lens and looks at how like conflict between poor working class people of color is always used as a front. It's always used as a distraction from the real issue. You know, we are, there are so many people that are uneducated about these things, and some can say like it's unintentional, it's intentional, but point being, like, regardless, it's keeping us from building communities together and building solidarity together, because like you were saying, like, we have the numbers, and it sucks that, like, you know, these things keep happening, but I don't know, man. It's tough. Now, creating that solidarity can be difficult, especially now, since there are people that want to disband our Department of Education. So how do we do it? Cue handshake equality picture. I mean, well, sort of. Did you guys know that South Asians and African Americans have been standing up for each other for over a century? Yeah, me neither. I found this article highlighting the solidarity between the two groups throughout history, and it's a great example of how in times of shared desperation and struggle, standing together brings more strength and perseverance than anything else. There's sections discussing the beginning of a successful group of mixed race black Bengalis in Harlem, as well as how from the 1920s and onward, Indian and African American freedom fighters started recognizing the links between their struggles against colonial rule and racist oppression. In 1942, Horace Cayton Jr., a prominent black sociologist and writer, said, "It may seem odd to hear India discussed in pool rooms in South State Street in Chicago, but India and the possibility of the Indians obtaining their freedom from England by any means has captured the imagination of the African American." The NAACP, the prominent African American civil rights group, passed a resolution supporting Indian autonomy the same year, with accompanying statements from major African American artist activists like Paul Robeson, Countee Cullen, and Langston Hughes, who actually wrote several poems about the shared struggles of both South Asians and African Americans. Show me that you mean democracy, please, 'cause from Bombay to Georgia, I'm beat to my knees. You can't lock up Nehru, club Roland Hayes, then make fine speeches about freedom's way. And in this poem, he's referring to Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India and an immensely influential political figure in the Indian independence movement. The article then reads, "After India gained independence, solidarity was complicated by the need to maintain good relations with a white-led American government. However, in a secret memo to the first Indian ambassadors to the US and China, Nehru remained clear about India's position. Our sympathies are entirely with the African Americans." So there's a solid history of solidarity in class struggle and in race struggle. Something along with many others that we can and should follow. Hold on a minute. Are you wondering why Saji only covered South Asian racism and not South Asian ignorance against other races? Well, before you call him biased and hypocritical, our good friend Foreign is actually going to be tackling black phobia among the Indian community in an entirely separate video. And Saji will be making a guest appearance. Hopefully not as the token brown person. I really hope not. So make sure you're subscribed to Foreign's channel and be on the lookout in the next couple of weeks. So maybe I didn't solve racism, maybe I didn't get a girlfriend, but at the very least, I hope I put a smile on your face and some knowledge in your brain. Because at the end of the day, that's all a man can do in this cruel, cruel world. And you know, if I did end up putting a smile on your face, then maybe you can help an old lad out and give him a subscription. It's free after all. Or even subscribe to my Patreon if you're feeling generous. You'll receive extra content and a shout out at the end of all my videos. Well, that's enough out of me. I'll just be sitting here on this curb with a hat filled with 2 pennies, a dime, and some kid's gum. Dinner. Well, hasta la vista, and good night.